Someone told me a long time ago that anything you say you want, the world will challenge you. Over the last 10 days, I have really been challenged and was amazed how things can conspire against you. Come along to see what I mean as I continue building a roof to cover my planned outdoor kitchen. Last time I got the post anchors laid in and simply needed to go back and screw them in for the screws below ground to expand and bolt them in place. Once that was done, all I needed to do was move the post I picked up at the big box store. Sunny Girl was there, of course, to supervise and almost had her head taken off, but I got it done. I didn't realize it at the time, but there's a matching up method to getting the post into the anchors, and just thought it was a tight fit. Learning from that mistake, I matched up the post, and you can hear it slip easily in place. And so it went for post 3, then 4. I went back and hammered in the first post to make sure it was seated all the way into the anchor. So far, so good. With the posts in place, I needed to make sure they were level to bolt them to the anchors. This part has to be precise because it will be the foundation of the roof. But talk about an epic fail. I tried using finishing nails to help brace the post into place, which you can see didn't work. I finally had to resort to my favorite time waster, pilot holes, to brace them in place. I also started wearing a tool belt because one tool after another was required. I just kept forgetting to put the tools back in it. And then another fail when I attempted to put in a horizontal board to hold the posts square to each other. More pilot holes and screws. But once again, I got it done. Now that the posts were finally seated correctly, I could go back and screw them into the post anchors. But just when I thought everything was smooth sailing, I lost the 7/16 socket I needed to screw in the post. One moment I had it, and then it was gone, never to return again. I was frustrated, but I refused to give up. I had to stop and do a 30-minute drive to Harbor Freight to buy a new one. Losing that socket taught me a lesson: to put tools back into the tool belt. That and walking back and forth a million times to get a tool that should have been near at hand. Despite the learning curve, the posts were set, and the next day I could return to the big box store to get the support beams that would carry the weight of the roof. The next morning, I got up early, determined to get a good start on the project. And on my way there, all of a sudden, the oil light came on in the van. This was serious, and I could blow the engine. I made a beeline to my mechanic. He gave me a ride home, and so much for good starts. The project was now on hold. 2 days later, my mechanic told me it was only the oil sensor that he had to replace, so I could head off to the big box store to get the support beams. Somehow, I was 5 inches over my 8 feet length measurement, which required me to move up to 12-foot-long supports that were super heavy. I managed to drag them out of the van and laid them on the grass. Based on the model I'm following, rafters will sit on the outside of each post, so I used a piece of wood scrap to mark off that space that I needed on each side of the supports, so I would know the distance I needed to put them in place. I did more pilot holes and put in screws, so there would be less fiddling with the heavy beam after I lifted it. I was working alone, so I planned to use a brace that would act as another person to hold the ends of the heavy support beam. I marked off where these would sit to support the front beam and began the process of getting them in place. But now comes the hard part: getting those heavy support beams up on the braces. I positioned myself to get as much leverage as possible to quickly get the beam onto the brace, to then slide and clamp it in place. It was heavy, but it worked. Followed by checking level. And now to do it again for the back support. It surprised me how quickly it went. But as I was putting in the holding screw, I realized there was a problem. In my haste to get it up, I hadn't positioned it correctly. I can laugh about it now, but you can imagine my frustration that I had to reposition it all over again. And then I was finally able to put in the support screws. As I was putting in the final support screw for the back, I was reminded of a line from the movie Hell or High Water. The line is, "If you want this plan to work, you have to become mountain lion mean." which goes back to my original statement about the world challenging anything you say you want. It was beginning to get dark, but I thought about how 10 years ago I built the pergola with the help of my nephew. Neither one of us knew what we were doing, but there it stood, a living testament that I could do this. I also thought about my dream of being able to cook right from my garden, but I had to be willing to persist. I'll also admit I felt a little relieved because I had made it through the hardest part. Putting on the rafters would be a lot easier because the foundation was now in place. See you next time.